Do you know why some lessons arrive only when it's too late? Because life often teaches us not through words, but through absence. There is a type of soul, rare, profound, almost sacred, that comes into your life and holds up a mirror. They are called the Super Empaths. And there is another type who walks in fear of that reflection, the Avoidants. They come face to face with the truth of who they are, and instead of leaning in, they step back, they flee. And what do they discover years later? That what they ran from was not danger, but revelation. A Super Empath sees you, not just the surface, not just the mask you wear for the world, but the hidden chambers of your soul. They feel the tremor of your joy, the echo of your pain, the unspoken corners where shame and fear hide. They do not judge, they simply reflect. And the Avoidant, in their fear of being seen, mistakes this divine clarity for intrusion. They step away, and in that stepping away, they unknowingly step away from their own evolution. You cannot understand the gift of unconditional presence until it is absent. You cannot comprehend the courage it takes to be fully vulnerable until you have faced a world where no one mirrors your truth the way they did. Avoidants learn too late that the strength of a super empath is not in what they give, but in what they awaken within you, awareness, love, and healing that no one else can offer. They teach without teaching. They heal without effort. They love without conditions. And yet, when avoided, they leave a void so profound that no distraction, no achievement, no passing companionship can ever fill it. The avoidant thinks they have escaped, but in truth, they carry a silent imprint, a quiet reminder that life has already whispered its sacred lessons, and they chose not to listen. Do not mistake absence for closure, nor time for forgetfulness. The lesson of the super empath is eternal. They remind us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to be seen despite it. They remind us that love, given fully, is a gift that carries both grace and responsibility. And they remind us, ultimately, that regret is not punishment, it is guidance. To those who run from what they fear to feel, one day you will look back and see not just the loss, but the wisdom that slipped through your fingers. You will understand that vulnerability was not weakness, that presence was not possession, and that love was never meant to be controlled, only received. And when you finally see it, the lesson will be undeniable. Some souls enter your life to transform you, and when ignored, they leave a silence so deep that it echoes through the rest of your days. So let this be the call not to avoidance but to courage, not to fear but to presence. For the super empath does not wait. They do not bargain. And the truth they reveal is one you carry forever, whether you learn it too late or choose to awaken to it today. There comes a moment in life when a person realizes the vastness of what they once took for granted, the richness of what they never fully saw, and the depth of what they were blind to while it was still before them. For the avoidant, this realization often comes too late, in the quiet spaces of solitude when the echo of a super empath's presence still lingers in the corners of memory. It is not merely the absence of a person they mourn, but the absence of understanding, the absence of connection, the absence of a mirror that reflected not just their surface, but the very core of who they are. A super empath does not simply meet you at the level of ordinary interaction. They descend into the depths of your being, sensing the tremors of fear, joy, hope, and pain, and holding them with a tenderness that few can comprehend. To be in the presence of such a soul is to be truly known, truly seen, and truly understood, yet the avoidant often walks away, mistaking this depth for threat rather than treasure. The lesson of emotional depth is never taught through lectures or advice, it is experienced. The avoidant may encounter a super empath and feel a pull that is both magnetic and terrifying, a sense that someone sees not just who they pretend to be, but who they are in their unguarded moments. This is not a superficial connection. It is a meeting of souls at a level that demands honesty, vulnerability, and courage. And it is precisely these qualities that avoidants, by nature, fear. They fear being exposed. They fear being needed. They fear the weight of someone else's perception so intimately entwined with their own sense of self. So they retreat. They build walls. They create distance. They justify absence. And in doing so, they miss the subtle miracle unfolding before them. The super empath is showing them a way to expand, to feel fully, to inhabit the emotional landscape they have long evaded. It is only later, often years later, that the realization dawns. In the quiet moments when they are alone with their thoughts, the avoidant begins to understand that what they walked away from was not ordinary companionship or fleeting affection. It was a soul that could reflect the hidden chambers of their heart with clarity and compassion. They recognize the magnitude of the emotional intelligence they ignored, the patience they dismissed, the attunement they assumed was ordinary. They begin to see that a super empath's presence is not about control, manipulation, or dependency. It is about illumination. It is about showing the avoidant who they truly are beneath layers of fear, avoidance, and self-protection. The depth they once ran from now becomes a mirror that cannot be ignored. And yet, even in this awakening, there is sorrow. There is the bitter awareness that such emotional depth is rare, almost sacred, and it cannot be summoned at we. It cannot be replaced by casual relationships or surface-level interactions. Once lost, it leaves a quiet ache, a subtle emptiness, and a lingering question. How could I have been blind to this treasure when it was in front of me? The lesson of emotional depth revealed too late is a divine kind of heartbreak, a recognition that the true wealth of life is not in what we acquire, but in what we allow ourselves to experience fully without fear or retreat. The avoidant realizes that their own fear of intimacy was not protecting them, it was depriving them of something transformative, something that could have reshaped the way they relate to themselves and the world. In the end, the depth of the super empath remains, even if the connection is lost. It lives as a silent reminder, a standard against which all future relationships are measured, a divine whisper that teaches the avoidant what it means to truly see, to truly feel, and to truly love. The realization may come too late to reclaim the past, but it comes with the power to awaken a new way of being, one that honors the emotional depth they once ran from, and that challenges them to never ignore it again when it appears in whatever form life delivers next. There is a quiet, almost sacred power in the presence of a super empath. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, but it is unmistakable. They hold a mirror before the avoidant, not a mirror that flatters nor one that deceives, but a mirror that reflects every truth the soul has hidden from itself. The avoidant often recoils from this reflection, sometimes without even realizing why. They see things in themselves that they have spent a lifetime denying: fear of intimacy, patterns of detachment, unacknowledged pain, and a longing for connection that they have buried beneath layers of self-protection. The super empath does not lecture or chastise. They do not insist that the avoidant confront these truths. They simply exist in such attunement that the avoidant cannot help but encounter themselves. And here lies the paradox. The very presence that could awaken growth is the very presence they fear. To be mirrored by a super empath is to face one's own shadow with honesty. It is to see not only the light you display to the world, but the parts you hide, avoid, and deny. Avoidants often flee from this reflection because it is uncomfortable, even threatening. There is an instinctive resistance to truth, especially when it challenges the self-image they have cultivated to feel safe. They have learned to navigate the world with emotional walls, calculated distance, and guarded interactions. But a super empath sees past these constructions. They sense the tremor in the avoidant's guarded heart, the hesitation behind their words, the subtle signals that betray longing and fear intertwined. And in that seeing, the avoidant is faced with a question they cannot avoid. Who am I beneath the walls, beneath the defenses, beneath the carefully crafted mask I present? Empty to the world? This mirror is not punitive. It is divine in its wisdom and patient in its intent. The super empath reflects not only what is, but what could be, the avoidant as a being fully alive to their emotions, fully capable of connection, fully aware of the depths they have yet to explore. The avoidant often mistakes this reflection for criticism, for judgment, or for demand. But it is neither. It is simply the truth held in the presence of someone whose empathy is so deep, so attuned, that the avoidant can no longer hide from themselves without the subtle awareness gnawing at their consciousness. And this gnawing over time becomes impossible to ignore. The tragedy is that this awareness is often resisted until it becomes unavoidable. The avoidant may leave, thinking that distance protects them. They may seek other relationships, other distractions, other illusions of freedom, yet the mirror does not disappear. The awareness lingers, dormant but persistent, until it awakens in the quiet moments of reflection, in the silence of solitude, in the echoes of a heart that has learned the weight of absence. They come to understand, often too late, that the super empath was not asking them to change. They were offering a gift, the chance to see themselves clearly, to confront the fears that had long dictated their life, to embrace the fullness of their own humanity. The mirror of self-awareness is one of life's harshest, yet most transformative teachers. It forces the avoidant to recognize the ways they have sabotaged their own growth, the ways they have run from the very connections that could have nurtured their evolution. It reveals the truth that avoidance is not strength, but avoidance of truth itself. And in that revelation, there is both grief and potential. Grief for the opportunities missed, for the love they could not fully receive or give, and potential, because once the reflection is truly seen, once the shadow is acknowledged without denial, the avoidant has a choice to continue running or to step into the light of self-awareness and embrace the chance to grow into the person they were always capable of becoming. The lesson, often learned too late, is that the super empath does not seek to fix the avoidant, does not try to control them, does not demand change. They only illuminate what already exists within, with a clarity that can be terrifying and liberating at once. And when the avoidant finally sees themselves in this mirror, the awareness is irreversible. It is a divine confrontation with the self, a reminder that the deepest growth comes not from comfort, but from the courage to face oneself fully, honestly, and without escape. Vulnerability is often mistaken for weakness, especially by those who carry the avoidant pattern. They have learned to armor themselves, to build walls around their hearts, to walk through life with careful distance and measured control. They fear that to reveal their emotions, their fears, their desires, is to open themselves to judgment, to rejection, to pain. And yet, the super empath teaches something entirely different. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the highest form of courage, the truest expression of strength, and the gateway to connection that is profound and transformative. The avoidant often does not recognize this until it is far too late, until the absence of someone who showed them the power of openness becomes an undeniable echo in their life. To be vulnerable is to step into the unknown, to expose the parts of yourself that you have carefully hidden from the world. It is to allow someone to see your rawness, your imperfections, your unspoken truths. Super empaths have an innate ability to hold that vulnerability without judgment, without exploitation, without impatience. They witness your pain, your hope, your joy, and they hold it tenderly as if it was sacred. The avoidant, accustomed to keeping life at arm's length, initially recoils from this. They fear the intimacy it demands, the emotional responsibility it creates, and the mirror it holds up to their own hidden needs. And so they retreat, believing they are protecting themselves, when in truth they are denying themselves the deepest forms of growth and connection. The value of vulnerability is revealed not in fleeting moments, but in the consistent, quiet presence of someone who allows you to be fully yourself. The super empath does not demand that you reveal. They create the space where revelation happens naturally. They show through their patience and understanding that being open does not make you fragile. It makes you alive. They teach without words that courage is not about domination or control, but about willingness to feel fully, to love fully, to live fully. And this is a lesson the avoidant often only realizes after they have lost that presence, after they have withdrawn into solitude and reflected on the richness they once refused to embrace. There is a sacred power in choosing to be seen. Vulnerability transforms fear into clarity, isolation into connection, and resistance into growth. The avoidant who once mistook distance for safety, discovers that it was actually avoidance that caused the greatest wounds. The absence of connection does not protect. They come to understand that hiding their heart only delayed the inevitable confrontation with their own truth. And when they reflect on the super empath who once held their vulnerability with care, they realize that the gift they refused was a gift of liberation, a chance to release fear, to experience love that is not conditional, to heal in ways that they could not have imagined. It is in the crucible of vulnerability that transformation occurs. The super empath models how to embrace uncertainty, how to bear the weight of authentic emotion, and how to honor the human need for intimacy. The avoidant who once ran from this gift sees in hindsight the magnitude of what they rejected, a love that scared nothing but honesty, a presence that required only openness, and a mirror that reflected not flaws to condemn, but truths to illuminate the path forward. They understand, often painfully, that avoidance does not shield them from hurt, but from the depth of life itself. The courage to be vulnerable is the courage to be fully human, and the super empath embodies this principle in its purest, most profound form. Ultimately, the avoidant comes to learn that vulnerability is a divine language of the heart. It is the bridge between isolation and intimacy, the pathway to self-discovery, and the foundation of connection that endures. When they recognize this truth, the weight of what they lost is undeniable. They realize that the super empath was not just a person in their life. They were a teacher of life itself, showing that love, presence, and courage are inseparable from the willingness to reveal the self. And in this understanding lies both the grief of regret and the spark of awakening, a recognition that vulnerability is not a risk to flee from, but a treasure to embrace whenever life offers it again. There are some souls whose capacity to give is so profound that it transcends ordinary understanding. The super empath is one of these rare beings. They invest emotionally without calculation, without expectation, without the desire for reward. Their love and attention are not transactional. They are an offering of the heart, pure and untainted. For the avoidant, this level F investment is both magnetic and terrifying. They have learned to protect themselves, to measure their interactions, to weigh the cost of every emotional encounter. And yet, when faced with someone who gives wholly, without agenda, without judgment, they are confronted with a reality that challenges every defense they have ever built. At first, it may feel overwhelming. Later, when it is gone, it becomes a truth they cannot escape. Unconditional emotional investment is a rare and sacred gift, and they walked away from it. To understand the power of unconditional giving, one must first understand the essence of the super empath. They are not driven by need or desire for control. They are driven by presence, by awareness, by the deep, almost divine understanding that every soul deserves to be seen, felt, and nurtured. When they connect with an avoidant, they do not demand reciprocity. They do not ask for assurances or proof of loyalty. They simply give consistently, tenderly, and wholly. They offer emotional space where the avoidant can unfold, where the heart can expand without fear of criticism or rejection. And the avoidant, who has spent a lifetime guarding their emotional territory, is often unable to recognize the magnitude of this gift until it has vanished. This investment is not shallow or superficial. The super empath engages at every level, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually. They remember the smallest details. They sense the hidden currents beneath words. They respond not only to expressed needs, but to unspoken longings. Every gesture, every word, every moment of their attention is infused with the purpose of connection. And for the avoidant, who has grown accustomed to transactional relationships or controlled exchanges, this kind of giving is almost incomprehensible. It challenges their worldview, it unsettles their defenses, and it exposes the parts of themselves they have long avoided confronting. The tragedy is that avoidants often fail to value this investment while it is present. They see it as normal, as expected, or worse, as suffocating. They do not yet understand that someone willing to invest so deeply without demand or precondition is offering them a doorway into a higher dimension of emotional experience. A space where love is not conditional on performance, where presence is not measured by compliance, and where the soul is nourished simply for being. It is only after distance, only after absence, only after the super empath withdraws, sometimes silently, sometimes definitively, that the avoidant comprehends what they have lost. The realization hits with a quiet but piercing clarity. Such selfless care, such unwavering attention, such emotional generosity cannot be replicated. Unconditional emotional investment teaches a lesson that is almost spiritual in its intensity. It reveals the difference between love that is conditional, fleeting, or self-serving, and love that is patient, enduring, and sovereign in its intent. The avoidant comes to see that this gift was not just about their comfort or happiness, it was about their growth, their awakening, their capacity to feel and to give in return. It was a sacred invitation to engage fully with life, to embrace connection, to surrender fear, and to experience the profound alchemy of shared humanity. And when this realization arrives, it carries both grief and awakening. Grief for what they neglected, for what they failed to nurture, for the void left behind by someone who gave so much and asked for nothing. Awakening because now, with clarity, the avoidant sees the standard set before them. They understand the power and rarity of someone who invests unconditionally, and they recognize that future opportunities to experience this level of care will never be identical. The super empath leaves an imprint, a divine benchmark of generosity and love, and the avoidant is forever marked by the understanding that to refuse such investment is to deny oneself the profound transformation that comes from being fully known and fully embraced. There is a subtle yet profound weight that lingers long after someone has left your life, a weight born not of absence alone, but of presence that was never fully acknowledged, appreciated, or honored. The super empath carries a presence unlike any other, quiet yet potent, gentle yet unwavering, attentive yet unobtrusive. They do not demand recognition, they do not impose attention, and yet the avoidant feels its pull, the undeniable sense that someone sees them in ways no one else has ever seen them. And when this presence is neglected, when it is dismissed, when the avoidant retreats into fear or self-protection, the consequence is not immediate punishment, but a slow, undeniable imprint that shapes their life in ways they may not recognize until much later. Neglecting such a presence is not a matter of mere oversight. It is a spiritual misstep. The super empath offers more than company or conversation. They offer understanding, intuition, and emotional resonance that penetrates to the very core of being. They notice the subtleties that go unseen by most. The tremor in a voice, the hesitation in a glance, the silent battles waged behind carefully maintained composure. Their presence is an unspoken acknowledgement of your humanity, a validation of your inner life, a sacred witnessing of your growth and struggle. The avoidant, in their instinct to retreat from intimacy, often fails to grasp the magnitude of this gift. They perceive it as ordinary or intrusive, when in truth it is extraordinary and transformative. The weight of neglected presence is felt in silence and in memory. It is the quiet awareness that someone offered themselves fully and you did not fully meet them there. The avoidant may attempt to rationalize, to distract themselves, to convince themselves that freedom and distance were more valuable than engagement. Yet deep down, they sense the subtle emptiness that grows in the wake of absence, the spaces where connection could have flourished, where understanding could have deepened, where love could have been nurtured. The super empath's presence is a divine constant, and to neglect it is to miss not just another person, but an opportunity for profound growth and awakening. This weight manifests in reflection. Years later, the avoidant may recall moments that once seemed insignificant, the patient listening, the quiet encouragement, the gentle guidance, the unwavering support. These were not casual acts. They were expressions of a soul invested in their journey, holding space for them to be seen without judgment, to be loved without expectation, to be known without fear. And the avoidant begins to recognize the gravity of what they ignored, the rare alignment of understanding, patience, and unconditional care that cannot be replicated. What was once taken for granted now emerges as a standard of relational depth they can neither dismiss nor forget. The lesson of neglected presence is ultimately a lesson in awareness, in humility, and in accountability. The avoidant realizes that absence does not erase the emotional truth of connection. The energy invested, the attention given, and the emotional labor expended by the super empath leaves a lasting imprint, a silent but undeniable testimony to what true engagement looks like. Neglecting this presence does not just affect the relationship, it shapes the avoidant's future interactions, influencing how they approach intimacy, trust, and emotional vulnerability in every subsequent connection. The missed opportunity becomes a benchmark, a reminder of both the beauty of genuine presence and the consequences of failing to meet it. And yet, within this weight lies a divine wisdom. It teaches the avoidant that connection is not transactional, that love is not earned through distance, and that true presence, consistent, attentive, unconditional, is rare and irreplaceable. The super empath's presence is a reflection of what the soul longs for, but often fails to recognize until it is absent. When the avoidant finally comprehends this, they understand that some gifts, once neglected, cannot be reclaimed in the same way. The weight of this realization is heavy, but it is also illuminating, calling them to deeper self-awareness, more intentional relationships, and a courage to honor presence whenever it enters their life again. Healing is not always loud. It does not always announce itself with fanfare or spectacle. Often, it arrives quietly, subtly, in ways that are easy to overlook until one reflects and sees the depth of the transformation. This is the work of the super empath. Their power lies not in grand gestures, but in the ability to bring profound emotional healing simply through presence, attention, and understanding. For the avoidant, this healing is often invisible at first. They see the super empath as over-attentive, as intrusive, or perhaps as someone whose care they cannot fully receive. They do not yet understand that every patient word, every empathetic observation, every act of unwavering presence is a thread weaving together a tapestry of recovery for wounds they may not even consciously know. The avoidant often carries old injuries, remnants of fear, neglect, or mistrust that have shaped the way they relate to the world. They have learned to armor themselves against intimacy, to hold back feelings, and to retreat from vulnerability. And yet, in the presence of a super empath, these walls begin to meet a gentle, persistent force that does not demand dismantling, but offers an invitation. The healing begins not with confrontation, but with witnessing. The super empath sees the pain, the fear, the avoidance, and treats it with tenderness. They hold space without judgment, without criticism, and without the expectation of immediate change. This is the alchemy of emotional healing, to be seen fully and accepted fully, even in one's brokenness. The power of this healing is often unrecognized until it is absent. Avoidance may leave, believing that distance is safety, only to discover later that the absence of the super empath has left a subtle void. They begin to notice the ways their old patterns resurface, the defensiveness, the retreat, the fear of closeness, and recognize that during the time of presence, these patterns had softened. The super empath, through empathy and attunement, had provided a balm to old wounds, not by fixing them, but by holding them with care. The avoidant may not have understood it in the moment, but the healing had been happening quietly beneath the surface, shaping their capacity to trust, to feel, and to connect. Emotional healing brought by a super empath is transformative precisely because it does not demand perfection. It does not require the avoidant to suddenly embrace vulnerability or abandon their fears entirely. Instead, it demonstrates through consistent presence and care that healing is possible, that hearts can expand without breaking, and that connection does not always equate to pain. This subtle, gentle restoration is a form of divine teaching, showing the avoidant that love and understanding are forces capable of dissolving even the deepest fears over time. When the avoidant finally reflects, often too late, they see the magnitude of what was offered. The realization is both painful and illuminating. Someone invested in their emotional restoration without expecting repayment, without judgment, without precondition. The super empath did not simply hold space, they restored it. They repaired what was frayed, nurtured what was tender, and allowed the avoidant to glimpse the possibility of a heart unburdened by fear. And when this gift is lost through avoidance, the absence of such healing leaves a silent ache, a reminder that emotional restoration cannot be recreated once it is departed. The lesson, though, is eternal. Emotional healing is not something that can be forced or demanded. It is received through openness, presence, and trust. The super empath embodies this principle, demonstrating that love, when given fully and without condition, possesses the power to mend what has long been broken. For the avoidant, the understanding comes too late for the relationship, but not too late for the soul. The awareness of what was lost becomes a guide for future encounters, a benchmark for the depth of care and understanding they must seek, and a call to recognize the subtle, transformative power of those who enter our lives to heal us in ways we may not even realize at the time. In the end, the power of emotional healing is a testament to the extraordinary nature of the super empath, a reminder that the greatest gifts are not always material, not always obvious, but deeply felt, quietly transformative, and eternally imprinted on the heart. Regret is one of life's most potent teachers, though it is rarely welcomed in the moment. It is not loud, it does not announce itself with fireworks, and it does not always feel fair. For the avoidant, regret often arrives quietly, long after the super empath has left their life, leaving only a lingering echo of presence that they once dismissed. It is in this echo that they begin to see what they ignored, what they fled from, and what they were too afraid to embrace. Regret is painful because it is not merely about loss, it is about awareness. It forces the avoidant to confront their choices, their fears, their patterns of avoidance, and their inability to fully receive what was given to them freely and wholly. The super empath is a mirror not only of love and understanding, but of possibility. They show the avoidant what connection can feel like when it is authentic, consistent, and unconditional. They reveal the power of presence, the value of emotional investment, and the liberation that comes from vulnerability. The avoidant, in their instinct to retreat, fails to appreciate this truth while it is happening. They leave, thinking they are preserving themselves, when in fact, they are preserving the very limitations that prevent them from fully experiencing life and love. It is only in hindsight, in the quiet moments of reflection, that the depth of what they lost becomes clear. And this clarity is what we call regret, a teacher disguised in absence and silence. Regret teaches in ways no words or lessons could. It shows the avoidant the cost of their choices, the relationships they allowed to slip away, the opportunities for growth they ignored, the rare soul who loved them fully and asked only that they show up in return. Unlike fear, which masks possibility, regret illuminates it. It does not allow for denial or justification. It confronts the avoidant with the truth that avoidance, no matter how justified at the time, has consequences. It is a reflection of what could have been, of the richness of connection forgone, and of the depth of presence they refused. And yet, this confrontation, painful as it is, carries within it the seeds of wisdom. Through regret, the avoidant begins to recognize patterns they had never questioned before. They see the way fear dictated their decisions, how walls of self-protection limited their growth, and how absence, both theirs and others, shaped their emotional world. They come to understand that avoidance is not freedom, but a form of limitation that keeps them from the very experiences that make life meaningful. The super empath becomes, in memory, a teacher of the highest order, not because they chastised or corrected, but because they offered a standard of connection, understanding, and love that reveals the gap between what was given and what was received. Regret is transformative because it forces reflection, humility, and awakening. It is the voice of life saying, "This is the truth you avoided. See it now." And while regret cannot bring back what was lost, it can ignite a profound shift in perspective. The avoidant learns, sometimes painfully, that true connection requires presence, courage, and vulnerability. They understand that love, once given fully, is not easily replicated, and that emotional gifts offered with intention and care are sacred and rare. The teacher is gone, but the lesson remains. Life, relationships, and emotional depth cannot be postponed indefinitely. Ultimately, regret is not punishment, it is guidance. It calls the avoidant to awareness, to accountability, and to a higher standard of engagement with others and themselves. The super empath, in their departure, leaves an indelible mark, a reminder of what is possible when hearts are open and souls are attuned. Regret ensures that the avoidant carries this lesson forward, shaping future connections with wisdom earned through absence and reflection. It is a teacher who speaks quietly, persistently, and divinely, reminding the soul that avoidance may bring temporary comfort, but understanding, presence, and love are the keys to a life fully lived. Thank you for trusting me to guide you through this journey of insight and reflection. May your heart carry the lessons learned, and may your path ahead be filled with clarity and courage. Goodbye.